can't overspeed because it's all controlled by computers and the rest of it. Unfortunately, they've done away with humans. Now, this is what was the relay room. So named because relays, as you'll know, are electrical switches. Our signalman upstairs would control miniature levers, which would activate relays, which in turn would energise signals and the air valves to operate points. So, in its day, it's had over 300 relays, clicking and clattering away like a broom. If you ever find yourself at Ealing Broadway, on the district line, not on the central, on the district line, your path into Ealing Broadway is controlled by relays. I'll show you which ones in a moment. But in the meantime, a plethora of stuff that we've begged, borrowed, and the other one from across the network. A lot of people will have donated stuff to us. We've got some good contacts out on the main line, so that some of our volunteers, one of our volunteers, Jamie, actually works for LU. So we've got some good working relationships with the main network, and when they upgrade a station or upgrade a bit of track, we get their castings. We've got a 4-aspect signal over there that's new, never came out the box, as it were. They were going to put it on the Met line to replace some of the signals out on the Met, because it's fast running on the Met, hence you need the 4 aspects. But of course, they're changing it over to ATO on the Met, so they don't need as many line-side signals. So someone said, hey, it's cluttering our warehouse up, do you want it? Whoa, over here. Behind you, now this is a learning curve for me. Disc signal, okay?
Yeah.
Now, I always thought each one of those red lights and each one of those white lights was LEDs.
It's funny you say this. Exactly the same.
Yeah. It's not.
No.
Fibre optic.
There are two 12-volt halogen type spotlights in there, which is what's activated by the switch. And they have fibre optic cables in front of them that actually protrude onto that disc surface. So it's actually two spotlights driving lots of fibre optic cables to form that picture. But I always thought for years and years and years they were all LEDs.
It's the same. It was only when we went for a spate of no reds or no whites.
Yeah.
How is it only no what?
Are they emergency brakes? When you pull it, it breaks the system.
They're at the side of every inch of tunnel, they were, on the tube. And the insulators were further apart, which allowed you a bit of flexibility and you could pinch the two together. They had another function as well. It's a telephone.
Yeah.
So the scenario is, right, you're driving your tube train, and all of a sudden you're thrown a red in the tunnel. You're sat there and you're thinking, what the bloody hell? Because back in the day there was no cab radio, there was no mobile phone. You were in a tunnel where you were stuck, you had no idea what was going on. If you were lucky, you caught that where there was one of those. So, if you were lucky enough to be stopped at a red next to a line side phone. Hello.
I survived well, hasn't it?
That's an original sort of upstairs, downstairs. That one is a genuine one. It came somewhere in between Baker Street and Finchley Road. So it's actually off the net. But so if you were lucky, you'd speak into that, get a mouthful of soot or a face full of soot for your troubles because they filled up with soot, and then you could find out what was going on. If you got stopped where there wasn't a trackside phone, this is where your box of tricks that you reported for duty came in handy, and you hooked that over there. Now you get the impression.
Yeah.
And you could ring the signaller. Find out what was going on. But the other use that these cables were, you pitched them together and it turned the track current off.
Yeah.
For 7 minutes. Not 6, certainly not 8, 7 minutes. Apparently the logic behind that was, it was decided that they could recover a timetable with a 7-minute delay without needing to cancel trains. And somebody also said that is probably the amount of time you need if you've got a potential suicide. The most common use of these was a driver in the tunnel would come around the corner, there'd be somebody stood in the forefoot.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it still happens today. If the driver was lucky enough, he could bring his train to a stand before he hit the person. He immediately pinched us together, get the track current off. He then had 7 minutes to get his potential suicide into a place of safety, in the cab, wherever. If he could talk him in within the 7 minutes, great, they proceeded, the power came back on, they proceeded. If they couldn't, he'd use his emergency phone, get onto line control, get the line shut down and the emergency services in place. So there was a darker side to the use of these as well. They're still there. A lot of these are still on tunnel side now, but they don't use them anymore with the advent of cab radio and lights.
I've seen them with the thin telephone type cable you can rip off.
Ah, right.
So you can break it.
Yes. So
they changed the rule 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So you don't use any voice function with the tunnel telephone.
Just
And
emergency.
the tunnel ones now are meant to be insulated and the heavy equipment still works.
but these are still there, but they never clean them anymore, so they're as dirty as the rest of the tunnel.
Yeah, very conductive.
I went to an incident where they corroded off the wall with a big water ingress.
Oh,
And
right.
they corroded off it. It was all over the track and it was...
Oh my word.
Yeah, she's only low volts, they're only about 5 volts, so, you know, put 630 volt current voltage through, that probably hurt these written the other end. This beast, reputedly an original from Epping. Now, going back a long time, it was the railways that led to a universal time in the United Kingdom. Prior to that, Scotland, London, Wales all had different times because it was all based on sunrise and sunset. The railways, the initial railways back in the 1800s, led to a universal time being adopted throughout the UK. Of course, in America, where it's hugely bigger, you've still got different times in different states. So they unified time. But of course, the problem was, locally, long before the days of atomic clocks and mobile phones that synchronised to it, this signal cabin, or the signal box was here, the station was there. So if you had a station master who was trying to dispatch his train at 9:30, but our signalman's watch said 9:35, someone was going to be 5 minutes out, and there was a whole lot of whistleblowing and bad feeling going to arise as a consequence. They brought in a master clock. Every 30 seconds, this sends a pulse out through that little relay there. It goes to that clock, and it goes to that clock. I'll have a look at that clock in a bit more detail in a moment. They're not Roman numerals. And there was a clock up on the station that was controlled by this, and of course there's a clock up in the signal cabin that had the same time. That guaranteed there could never be more than 30 seconds adrift.
Yeah.
Which obviously made life a whole lot easier when it came to dispatching trains. Right, now back to the original reason this is called the relay route. Relays. They range in age. These big ones here, they picked up the nickname fish tank relays, which is silly because if you fill them with water and put a fish in there, it doesn't work. But nonetheless, as I was saying, if you go to Ealing Broadway on the district line, it is still these type of relays that will signal your train's path into Ealing Broadway. Not gone automatic like Central. A later edition of these are British Rail types. You'll see these not only in British Rail across the UK, but we exported hundreds, thousands, millions of the damn things. An awful lot of foreign railways use these identical relays as well. And then of course a bit more recently, and I don't know if they're in use in the main line, you've got the Omron type plug-in relays down the bottom. We might have put them there out of sight because they come from the simulator upstairs. But yes, these are all the different types of relays. You've got big transformers up there to supply the correct voltages and what have you. And these were made in the 1930s. So they're coming up 100 years old. And they still work and they still signal trains at the end of the district lines and at the end of the metropolitan lines. They may do it and they could. They're all clicking and chattering away in its heyday. They, of course, were controlled by the signalman upstairs, but on a good day, and you've already taken a photo of it, the signalman used to sit and read the beano. Because, they actually put that on, because that was your signalman. That was your Monday to Friday signalman. There was probably another one in the rack underneath that was your weekend signalman. They went into the train programming machine at the close of play on, let's say, a Friday night into Saturday morning, and this would be the weekend timetable.
What I did for 8 years.
Get away!
Signalling with these.
Wow, they've still got these in Broadway.
So they've all gone when the Victoria line shut.
Yeah.
Because they got rid of theirs years ago and used an emulator, and then they replaced all the manual ones with an emulator.
Yeah, the USB stick
And now,
plug, isn't it? Yeah.
even those have been changed now. But yeah, because you used to. But we didn't change them. The signal text would go and change them.
Oh right, yeah. After the
And
last
load
one in
up.
on Friday night,
Occasionally,
usually, yeah.
it would get jammed, or it'd be out of alignment.
Or the bulb at the back would go out and it couldn't sense the light, yeah. But interestingly, as you'll know, that was the time, basically the time, that was the train sequence. That was the row of dots that actually nudged it on bit by bit. The feelers were run by air, I didn't know that. Yeah, they were actually powered by air. When this nudged round, the next thing it did, it got a blast of air that put these feelers in and they detected the presence or otherwise of a hole, and that was what then threw the relays to operate the points of the signals. But yeah, that ramp was actually operated by air. You'd have thought it would have been a solenoid, wouldn't you? The bulb on the back there's a light sensor at the front that detected the hole, so it knew it was going 1 notch. It wasn't a sprocket arrangement, because the sprockets will eventually tear. So yeah, that was our automated signalman. Now, this came into its own in a perfect world. Nobody stuck under a train, no doors failing, no drivers gone sick, etc, etc. So obviously there was basically an override switch. So when the real world kicked in and there were people stuck indoors and the rest of it and that went out the window, that was when our signalman then started earning his money.
So what you do as a signalman is you've got the desk, and you'd have the number on a big readout up there. Then you'd have the
Is this the train number you're talking about?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
you've got that here. So you'd have your fixed line diagrams.
Yeah.
And then you'd have your warning bar, and then above that you'd have your numbers,
Right.
which you wouldn't have for everywhere, but normally every junction.
Yeah.
So say here, I'm sorry if you're going to talk about all this in a minute. So this train here is 100.
Oh, right, yeah.
This is train 141.
Yeah.
So say train 141 was cancelled, you don't want it to
Pick it
appear
up.
to step onto it. So you put 141, train cancel into this really crap thing. And then when it gets to 141, it goes set
It
automatically.
goes manned one, right.
And, sorry, you're going to talk about what's the number in?
I was going to talk about that clock up there,
Oh, okay.
which hasn't got Roman numerals.
So this is really rare to have an 8 on the underground.
Yeah.
Because generally, in the old days, before this came in, you did have 8s and 9s.
Yeah.
And then they stopped using it. So after 7 is 10, after 17 is 20. And it's because of octanal numbering. If you look, there's only 8
Yes.
spots. So all the time is made up of half, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16 and 32.
The 30-second intervals that the clock has.
Got you.
And the train numbers, the highest number you can have on here is a 377.
So
It's been 8 years now since I've done this.
Good
377.
Oh, yeah.
But 377, 376 was end of service,
Yeah.
and 375 was start of service. So in reality, on the lines where you had this, you could only have a number up to 374, but you couldn't have anything with an 8 or a 9.
But interestingly, the rat is running on 755. So they've obviously expanded it somehow, I guess, since they got rid of these, don't they?
But I think now with the computers, you can have 8s and 9s again.
Yeah, right,
But
yeah.
there's a tradition that you don't have.
You don't have them.
And in fact,
These numbers weren't randomly put in there. This comes from a photo of something running on the front of a train. So they put 4880 to match what was on the front of a train somewhere. So that must have been an exceptional train. Because the work stuff normally starts with a 7, doesn't it? If it's an engineering stock or the rat, they usually got a
5,
7.
6 or 7, depending. If it's self-propelled, it's generally a 7.
Yeah.
If it's battery loco, it's generally a 6.
Talking of battery locos, did you hear about the Epping Ongar? They celebrated, I think it was 50 years since the tube closed.
No.
And what they did, right, let's go. What station's missing?
Oh, yeah.
Got it?
Yeah.
Was it Blake?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Blake. Blakehall was the first casualty of the closure of the Epping Signal line. They did a passenger survey thing, ticket collection thing, and it averaged to 8 passengers a day. So they're all on first aid terms.
Done on the Sunday bank holiday, yeah.
So it was the first financial casualty of the Epping Signal branch. It still stays in the railway though, because the current owner of Blakehall Station, the buildings are still intact. They've recently reinstated the platform. Is the owner of the Epping Signal Railway. So it's still part of the railway family as such. So he owns and runs steam trains, heritage trains on the Epping Signal. So yes, now going back to these tickets. Back in the day, you didn't have tap in, tap out buttons. You actually bought a ticket, an Edmondson style ticket. And when you completed your journey to wherever your ticket said you were going to, you handed it in to a guard, well, to a member of staff at a passimeter, a little box on the way out. All those spent tickets were put in a bag, and at the end of service every day, they used to be collected. I believe it was the last train that did it, but I'm not sure. They were collected and taken back down to a counting house in London. And some poor sod had to go on the tube for every station on the tube, counting every ticket. 2 reasons. Number one, they could work out whether anybody was on the fiddle and sort of selling tickets that weren't being sold and taking money that wasn't, all the rest of it. But the other reason was so they could keep an eye on passenger numbers. Now, if you work out there are 8 passengers a day there weren't going to be that many more there. So that's a bit of an overkill size for a bag of tickets, isn't it? But the big ones like your Oxford Streets and stuff, yes, I can imagine they were pretty full. But you could have probably put everything for North Weald in an envelope. Interesting photo. This one here, it's 120 years old, this photo, from 1903, and we are standing roughly where that white mark is there. Back in the day, Epping was busy. That is now the car park, but back in the day it was carriage sidings, they had a turntable, there was a coaling point, all the rest of it. The other things that used to happen in Epping were, on this side of the line, so behind us here, was a brickworks. When they first dug the railway, what became the Great Eastern Railway before the tube took it over, they discovered the soil here was perfect for making bricks. So they set up a brick factory. But of course, to fire a brick, you need a heat source. So they built the gasworks. So you had the quirky situation up until the mid-60s, where you could be standing in your signal cabin here, signal a tube train, and the next thing you signaled past was a steam train with a load of coal wagons. So it was a bit of a strange line. If you ever notice, going back down to London, just about every station on the way to, before you go underground at Nathan or wherever it is, there's spare track. Well, there's space for a spare track at the top. That was the old freight line. And there was an awful lot of freight generated by at least these. Apparently, Ongar was very good for agricultural stuff. So there was a lot of milk, there was a lot of livestock and stuff like that. So it was, back in the day, a very busy railway, but not for passengers. And of course, as we outsourced everything to China and all the rest of it, then there wasn't anything left. And the motor car came in and killed what was left. Now, signal diagram. If you're used to mainline signal diagrams, London Transport chose to do it the exact opposite. On a mainline railway, the usual practice is to indicate the presence of a train by illuminating a section of track. When a train isn't present, it'll go dark. London Underground shows the opposite. The presence of a train on an underground line map is denoted by the sections going dark. Now, I believe we've set a bit of a simulation up here. This one here should move along, and you'll see as it progresses, a section in front of it will go dark, the section behind it will clear and go light again. So this is basically the 180-degree opposite of what you get on the mainline signal box. This will just shunt trains round and send them down to Rodin Valley or straight on a sequence. So, after craning our neck looking at that, take a look at that clock. Take a closer look at that clock. It's binary. That ties in with our automatic signaller. So our magazine over there, the time was in binary.
Yeah.
That's in binary. Now, interestingly, binary is the bread and butter of all computer systems because a binary digit is either on or off. The computer can cope with that. These systems were in place from the 1930s. How many computers were around in the 1930s?
Yeah.
I always marvel London Underground was at the cutting edge of new technology. It's fallen behind now, regrettably, but it was the first to do contactless payments. It was the first to use binary and a magazine system, but basically an automated system for signalling trains. It was the first railway in the world to run an automated train. Basically what could be a driverless train if you discount the function of the drivers as of just opening doors. So it was always at the cutting edge. It commands a lot of respect.
So just from failure boys, is it sequential remake?
Sorry?
It's not sequential. Okay, shall I? Yeah.
Yeah, go on, Mark. What you going to do?
From failure boys, which I'm guessing.
Well, first of all, because this is simulated,
yeah.
it's connected to the computer downstairs. We just need to push a button
Okay.
to call on a train, which will drop on
Yeah.
this there, of course. And if you pull number 1,
Should come in there.
that's the possession lever.
Yeah.
That will request a train from North Will
Okay.
on that side.
So like a slot.
Yeah. Yeah, so once we've pulled that, you know, that's it. You can't do anything else. The single line is occupied, or will be. You might have pulled number 3 to go with that. So
We're waiting on the train on that
one.
Mark, 15 minutes.
And this one here,
Who is the platform?
24 to 23.
That'll bring into platform 2.
That one's dropped on, takes a minute or so in real time.
Yeah.
It's playing up. And there's no one on the other side. Did you work on the underground as well?
No, I'm finishing I'm S&T.
Oh, right.
I just fix them. Well, I'm main network.
Right.
Notice what I was saying about. Notice what I was saying about the coal siding.
Yeah.
You used to always talk about the release.
Yes.
Okay, so the driver's still eating his sandwich
I never
down
used
at the same
one.
voice.
I'm glad in mine. It didn't have a hand.
Oh, it's coming out.
It was always a curse. The handle's there and the phone's down the other end. And people are trying to ring you to find out what's going on. And have a go at you because you answered the phone.
So is all the locking working, or is it?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Manual and electric. Those relays downstairs work.
Yeah.
They work on these levers. So you've got one in platform 1. Platform 1 is the right hand one as you're looking at it from here.
Right. Number 1, 2 and 3 to go back.
Oh, look, you're doing 2 at the same time.
We used to.
That's professionalism, that is.
The only is with these, because this is all quite new, they take quite a few years to get so loose and easy.
Yeah.
And this is still too damn tight, really.
So I'm not going to do it here, but we used to be able to
Yeah.
quickly fling them over.
Yeah. Now that one, we'll send that to North Will. But before we do that, you can pull them points.
Yeah.
we won't be able to send it until we can actually move it from the platform over to number 20, but we can't send it up there. We've got to get permission. If you push the button at the end,
Yeah.
you'll hear a clonk. You hear that?
Yeah.
That means he's accepted it and he's released the locking in here for us to send it up there.
I know it's the lockings on 20s.
Yeah.
Lever.
Yeah.
Is that common?
No, the locking, yeah. 20 only. Right, 22. 19 first.
Where's the
Detonator.
Where's that on the dial?
See the two little
Oh yeah, yeah, I see it now.
and 20.
Yeah. Pretty neat. Whoever's got all this in.
Yeah. That's it, and 19
Oh,
back. Right, when that goes out, we'll call on another train and bring it in to platform 1. Our indications are light there, just got to wait for that to drop off. Yeah. Yeah, put 1 and 2 back. And pole number 25, which is the calling on.
Yeah. Oh, sweet.
And number 2. Yeah, you see, when they put this frame back in again, it was all done to 70 years ago as it was then.
Crossing him into 1.
Yeah, we've got to bring him down to 23, put 24 back behind him,
Yeah. I can go back now,
and
can't
then we can set the road up to put him in 1.
I? Right. 13s.
Yep. Number 12 first.
Ah. Oh, yes. Come on. Horrible check lock on that. Right.
And number 23.
23 signal.